IntoWork.
Exactly.
Back to it, Australia. Hello and welcome to IntoWork, presented by IntoWork Australia, where we will hear about what the Australian job industry is up to and how employers and employees are navigating the workforce. I am, of course, joined by Poul, Bottern, the Group CEO of IntoWork Australia. Thank you so much for your time, as always.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to be here.
Not at all. Now, exciting numbers today. We've got the Boosting Apprenticeships commencements, which have been hailed a success with over 140,000 new apprenticeships created in just 7 months. How did they pull that off, do you reckon?
It's an incredible achievement, isn't it? And if we go back towards the end of last calendar year, when this scheme was introduced by the government, it was an opportunity for businesses to take on a new apprentice or trainee and to be able to get a wage subsidy for them for that first 12 months, so up to $7,000 a quarter. So as you can imagine, a lot of employers said, yes, absolutely, let's take that opportunity. So what that's meant is you've got a lot of younger, but also older people now joining the workforce as an apprentice, as a trainee in a new area. And that's led to this huge increase. But the great thing is that more recently now the government has decided to extend and expand that scheme even further. So people can keep taking on people now until March 2022. But it is an important initiative because it's difficult sometimes for people to be able to see how they're going to take on an apprentice or a trainee, particularly in those early stages when maybe their skill levels are a bit lower, how they're going to afford to take somebody on. This does actually help them to be able to make that possible.
And that brings me to my next point, where workforce skills are being touted as the single biggest challenge facing the Australian economy in, of course, recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. Do you want to just take us through a bit about the skills that are maybe lacking?
Absolutely. And look, that is part of the challenge that we have. I think in the past we were quite dependent on bringing skilled migrants in from overseas and filling a whole range of roles that we had over here. So from all sorts of different industries, whether it was in sort of building construction, traditional trades type areas, whether it's out on the mines, whether it's in hospitality, whether it's in tourism areas. There's been a lack of that opportunity, of course, now to bring people in with the international border closures. So now the question is, how do we upskill and train people and also bring people through? And the best way of doing that now really is about apprenticeships and traineeships. So there's this huge demand, huge need. Industry's crying out for people. But they can't just expect people to have the skills. They actually do need people, they need to invest in the training and equipping of people themselves.
Especially if they're looking to create 250,000 jobs over the next 2 years through the latest budget, over half of which will be apprenticeships and traineeships. They've got a lot of work ahead of them.
Well, they do, and I think the goal is now probably about 170,000, or the hope is probably another 170,000 or so apprentices and trainees being signed up between now and March 2022. That's a lot of people, but it's also for many, particularly young people who are now trying to work out their next steps. Well, it's a fantastic opportunity, isn't it, to be able to get onto that. So I think whether it's from both state and federal government, there's a commitment and a realisation now that there needs to be this investment into apprenticeships. But you know, at the end of the day, it's still up to businesses, because businesses are the ones that actually have the skills. So they're the ones that can impart the skills onto the next person. So it won't automatically happen, of course. So I really take my hat off to businesses out there that are going, yes, let's make this happen.
Let's engage, let's get going. Yeah, some exciting stuff with those numbers there. But let's bring in our guest for today. And it is Georgina Vidler, who used to work at Flight Centre but was made redundant during the pandemic, of course, and is now working in IntoWork's contact centre in Adelaide, currently completing a traineeship certification 3 customer engagement, and she is here to share her journey so far, I should say. Georgina, are you there?
Yes, hi Mike, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Now, just to start off, it was obviously a very difficult year for us in 2020. Take us through your journey from being employed at Flight Centre, obviously seeing what was happening on the news, and where you've ended up today.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting to be a travel agent in a pandemic, to say the least, and especially when you're quite new to it. I was actually completing a traineeship with Flight Centre through MAS, and yes, when you think you've found your career path and everything's so happy, you're sending people on holidays and you're all excited, and all of a sudden no one can go anywhere and it all shuts down. It is a big change. I did find myself out without work, sorry. And I found a part-time job at Woolworths, and I thought, well, I've had a career and now that's sort of come to an end. What do I do next?
Well, it's great that you didn't just sit on your hands and, you know, you actually were proactive. Where did
Yeah.
the opportunity expand when you got in contact with IntoWork Australia and Poul?
Yeah, so it was actually, I got contacted by Maz, and they reached out and said that we have a fantastic opportunity here in Adelaide, and I think that you have a lot of transferable skills from working as a travel agent, and it will allow you to complete a Cert 3 in customer engagement, which obviously it's fantastic when you can get a nationally recognised qualification while you're just doing your job, and it it wasn't something that I really knew existed before Maz reached out. I was sort of like, oh, Maz, who's that? But it's certainly changed the way that I look at work and how valuable traineeships are. Yeah, best job I've ever had, hands
Well,
down.
you've certainly got the headset still going on, so that all works out quite
Yeah.
well. But again, the focus on that upskilling was really important. So, Poul, over to you. How did, aside from the obvious, the COVID-19 pandemic impact the jobs market, especially when it came to apprenticeships and traineeships?
Yeah, look, and I think you've put it so well, Georgina, that part of the challenge, of course, was people in certain industries losing their jobs, and IntoWork and Maz is part of the IntoWork group. Through IntoWork, what we actually did was we had a long talk with Flight Centre. We've been doing the training there for Flight Centre for a long time. We've been supporting the apprentices and trainees there within the business. And we said, well, rather than, of course, people just necessarily losing their jobs around the place, can we actually work with Flight Centre to engage some of the people who've built up fantastic skills, like you have as well, and to be able to engage those people back into the workforce, but in a different type of role. And so the contact centre is obviously a front-facing role, and it's all actually because we've needed to expand and grow because of the demand for apprenticeships and traineeships. So the fantastic thing is that Georgina is actually on the phone with people who are wanting to work through becoming an apprentice, becoming a trainee, or receiving support while they are one, and while she's currently undergoing her own at the same time. But she's been able to reskill because we were able to identify key people who were the right people, the right fit to be able to reskill and take on that new role with us going forward. And so people have been redeploying into new roles right across the country. But rather than just saying, I have to stick to the same type of career, but actually taking my skill set and then redeploying that to a brand new area as well, which is exactly what you've done. And I think that gives us hope in the future as well, because we have to keep being more nimble than we've ever been before. I think if there's one thing we've learned from last year, those words around pivot and nimble, and that's just all those overused terms. But I think we've had to do that as individuals too, haven't we? Not just as companies as well. And that's clearly what Georgina and a number of other people have been doing right across the country. So I think as we go forward, we'll have to keep moving around and keep taking on new opportunities too.
I love the phrase redeploy. I think that's quite good. You know, you're not withdrawing into yourself. And I'll go back to you, Georgina, just briefly. And how did you go? I might touch on mental health in losing your job. It's a very scary thing. How did you cope initially? And then, of course, how did IntoWork Australia sort of affect your health moving forward and getting back into the workforce?
Yeah, definitely. I guess I had sort of decided on my career path, and having that sort of just vanish into thin air is very tough on your mental health. But Maz reached out to me and made sure that I was doing okay, because they were my apprenticeship support network at the time, and it's quite rewarding that it's come full circle and that now I'm doing that for other people, maybe not that have lost their job, but people that are struggling, and getting to help them and help them to find success in their chosen career path.
That's great. And again, well done on staying motivated and keeping moving. I think that's a very important part of pivoting, which I didn't want to use the word, but Paul, back over to you. And the government has talked about jobs training and skills being key in the recovery of the economy. And working with industry to develop targeted support measures, I understand, can you outline why the first 12 months of these programs and what else is on offer?
Yeah, sure.
At the moment.
And look, particularly over the first 12 months, as I was starting to say before, you've got a bit of a challenge in that, saying if a plumber wants to take on a new apprentice, and they're trying to work through, well, how do I make it really work here? In the first 12 months, they're not so likely to be that highly productive. Because they're still trying to work out how all the stuff works and make mistakes and all the rest, and having to get a lot of supervision. So the first 12 months is a critical time to be able to provide that additional support. to a business so they can take someone on, and it doesn't hurt them as much financially. So that's really why the scheme is set up the way that it is. By the time we get to the second year or the third year or fourth year, they're obviously being far more productive and able to give more back to the company as well in their role, which is great. So I think there's a range of different types of initiatives going forward. Sometimes it's about being able to support people with particular vulnerabilities or struggles that they might have as well, so they can get more additional support through that. And other times it's just more, we actually reach out through what's called gateway services to be able to help find the right person to be able to come into an apprenticeship or traineeship for a business. Other times it's about some of that in-training support. Sometimes people go through a really hard time while they're in the middle of an apprenticeship or traineeship. Maybe someone from their family has passed away, maybe there's been a relationship breakdown, maybe they're just struggling in their relationship with their employer. And so what we do is we then work closely with them to be able to make it work for them so they don't necessarily give up and then have to come back into the workforce again later on. So there's a range of different supports like that we can do.
I was just going to touch on those gateway supports. Can you tell me a little bit more about those, just briefly?
Yeah. So really what we do is we actually go out into schools and we connect with people within schools to be able to find the right sort of people for different career pathways. Now that could be with an apprenticeship or traineeship. It could actually be going to uni, or it could be going directly into employment. But we actually use various online tools to be able to work out what type of career pathways might be most suitable for you. You might have always thought that maybe becoming an electrician was ideal because your dad's an electrician, but in fact as you go through it, you discover that no, becoming a chef is actually really what you're most passionate about. And so that's helping people to be able to target towards that. And then we work with, individuals around the gateway services, and then we work with the businesses around helping to tailor what they need as well, to be able to find the right people to come in, and then run training programs like we've done with Flight Centre, but also like we're doing with Grilled and others at the moment too, where we train and support their staff within their company who've now joined the company to be able to meet their needs as well going forward. Much like we've been doing within our own contact centre, where we train people up, we train people within other companies as well. So again, the government's put a lot of investment into training, so about $1 billion between state and federal governments, and now they're repeating that again in the next 12 months. So there's a huge investment, training, recruitment, employment, and apprenticeships, traineeships going forward. So really, it's going to be one of our best ways of building, for all companies, building a strong, robust workforce.
Across the board, yeah. And Georgina, does that ring true to you and your experiences just at the moment with all the training that you've been undergoing and looking to complete the Certification 3?
Yeah, definitely. We receive a lot of in-house training here in the contact centre, so we've always got Michelle there to help us out if we have any questions, and being able to complete a Cert 3 while you're doing your work, it really helps you to learn new skills and to really put that into your day-to-day work.
I'm so glad it all worked out for you in the end, and for a lot of people out there as well who you guys have helped, which is so exciting to see. That's all we've got time for today, Georgina. Thank you so much for your time and insight on this topic.
No worries. Thank you.
See you next time. See ya.
Thanks.
There's a lot going in there. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of things, Paul. It's exciting.
Yeah,
it's
it
exciting
is.
to see.
It's an exciting time. And look, businesses can reach out to us, individuals can reach out to us. Our number is 1399-WORK, and we'll help people to be able to find the right career pathway or find the right person to come join their team. But it's an exciting time, but there's challenges for industry and business.
And that's what I was going to say, what Georgina, obviously went through. We're allowed to be excited now, I think. We can look to the future and
gradually rebuild.
Absolutely. Rebuild. A lot of great points from today's episode today, guys, about the future of apprenticeships and training. And as always, today's discussion was presented by IntoWork, where we hear about what Australian job industry is up to and what the employees and employers and how they're navigating the workforce. Thank you so much for your time. I'm Mike Bottern, and we will see you next time.
Look forward to it.
We've got a lot of work to do.
Ticker News. Be part of the change.